As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, a thousand meal loaves gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people here are singing bread and roses, bread and roses. As we come marching, marching, we battle to for men, for they are in the struggle, and together we shall win. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies give us bread, but give us roses. As we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing, their ancient strife for bread, small art and love and beauty, their trudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we're standing proud and tall. The rising of the women means the rising of the soul. No more the drudge and idler tend that toil where one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses.
Welcome. Good evening, everyone. We are here tonight
Should I make notes, you think?
because we have heard the cry of the earth and cannot stand by any longer. We're here to explore the call, to be inspired, to learn about the tools we might employ, and to meet our guides and our allies in the quest for justice and healing. I'm sad to share with you at the outset that we just learned moments before we gathered that Pat McCabe, Woman Stands Shining, is not able to be with us. She's caring for her 97-year-old mother and has had to step back from this project, though she felt that this work was so very needed and wanted very much to contribute. At this point, it's my honor and pleasure to invite the invocation for this evening in two voices, Rabbi Arthur Waskow of the Shalom Center and Reverend Matthew Fox of the Order of the Sacred Earth. Unmute, Arthur.
Sorry. Shalom, I was saying, peace, and the peaceful greetings of many other traditions. I want to give a sketch of what we are gathered for. This is the first gathering toward the creation of a multi-faith institute for eco-justice activists. And we'll be continuing in April and May and June with the actual training, to which you'll see at the end, we're inviting everyone who can take part in this training. I'm especially sorry that Pat McCabe was in such urgent need of caring for her mother. I'm glad that she was available to do that, but sorry that she wasn't here, because we are especially conscious that scattered all across this continent are lands that were, by some of the traditional residents, called Turtle Island, the whole continent, Turtle Island. And that much we have relearned from the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island has been a renewed connection with the sacred earth. One of the reasons that we are drawing on ancient traditions in the Hebrew Bible is exactly that. That's a treasury of the practices, the celebrations, the festivals, the symbols of a people that was an indigenous people living as shepherds and farmers and tree keepers in a little sliver of land on the Eastern Mediterranean. We learned from that, even though we live obviously in a very different society, an industrial and even some post-industrial society, and the whole planet, the whole globe is really in danger, mortally wounded, and it's our job to repair that wound, drawing on the ancient teachings in order to be able to do it. We draw on them for two reasons. They have intrinsic value because they came from closeness to the sacred earth, and because their descendants, the bearers of that treasury, have real potential power to make change in American society. American especially because the United States has more power for evil or for good in healing the split between the human behavior and earth, our mother and our common home. So the last thing I want to say is this. The ancient name of one aspect of God, Yud-He, Vav-He, or in the Western alphabet, YHWH, we were taught not to try to pronounce. But when in a moment of holy chutzpah, I tried doing that some years ago, pronouncing it, what came out was not Lord or Adonai, the word that means Lord in Hebrew, or Dominus or Kyrie. What came out was, try it yourself, YHWH with no vowels, not Yahweh, not Yehovah, no vowels, just a breath. That breath is in every human language, the only sound that is in every human language. And it's also in the non-speaking, you might say, of every life form on the planet. Trees, bushes, frogs, fish, all breathe along with humans. We are about to engage in a conversation that uses our breath for words. Remember, the words we say are simply breath, modified by our mouths and tongues and noses. If we keep in mind that the breath we are breathing comes from every life form and is a single breath of every life form. If we keep that in mind, then this conversation we're having tonight will mean that the words we use will aim toward wisdom. We welcome our words in that hope, in that intention, the words that are the breath of life.
Amen. Aho. Yes, and that very breath is spirit. And so spirit is omnipresent in all of our breaths, in all of our creatures, in truly all of our earth systems and the cosmos itself that gave birth to our amazing earth and to our breath and to our possibilities. So let us let us offer a prayer to our Mother, Father, creator of the universe, creator of breath, creator of spirit, being one with spirit, creator of our lives. O Mother, Father, lover of the earth, lover of your creation, calling it good and very good, such a blessing we've all received over a 13.8 billion year journey that has brought us here. Look into our hearts, the hearts of all humans, of all human traditions and religions, of all human institutions, educational, political, economic, communications. Look into our hearts and stir us up with a deeper passion, a deeper caring for this earth that is bigger than us, that birthed us, and we did not birth it. Assist us to let go of our anthropocentrism, or speciesism, what Pope Francis calls our narcissism as a species. To truly be reverent and grateful and awestruck by all that is beautiful and good and healthy and wonderful for all the species, for all us people, us humans, us two-legged ones. Teach us to let go, to recreate our institutions, to recreate, transform our very souls, that moral imagination might rise, that eco-justice will be our heart blood, This we ask in the name of all our ancestors, of Abraham and Sarah and Moses and Aaron and Esther, in the name of the Buddha and Lao Tzu and White Buffalo Woman and Black Elk and Muhammad and Jesus and Mahatma Gandhi and all those you have sent to awaken us. May we be awakened, especially in this time of Passover and in this time of Lent, Palm Sunday, and Easter. We may be transformed human beings, reaching a new level of our evolution as a species. That level being a full sense of compassion toward one another, towards self, and surely toward the other creatures that are suffering at our hands, because for too long our species has been narcissistic and self-serving. Open our hearts, open our hands, open our minds. We may be allies with one another to carry on this important and wonderful work. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Tyler?
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Arthur. And before I begin my part, I'm excited that I get to invite and welcome a dear friend and guide who carries several Indigenous traditions, Erica Gagnon. In lieu of Pat not being able to be here with us, the last minute Erica said that she was able to jump on for the beginning of this call, and she's really excited about the work we're doing here in this program. And so Erica, would you mind jumping on and giving us a blessing?
Thank you so much, Skylar. It's an honor to be here, especially on this day of the spring equinox. And I will just offer a blessing prayer, and you can have your eyes open or closed as long as your hearts are open. Aho, Great Spirit, great mystery, gratitude in this moment for one more day to be upon this beautiful planet. Gratitude first and foremost to the ancestors of this land, the First Nations people in all of the areas where you find yourself, for all they have lived and breathed since the beginning of their time, and also for their descendants who are still here upon these lands as the original stewards. Gratitude for the four winds, the four directions, the four elements, from the heart of the earth to the heart of the sky, to the heart of the spirit that lies between. Gratitude for the standing people, the trees with their roots in the ground and their branches in the air, reminding us that we too are that connection between earth and sky. Gratitude for all of the four-legged creatures, for when they walk on all fours, their hearts are closest to this earth, and they can best feel the heartbeat of this planet, and they know how to live in harmony and balance upon her. Gratitude for the two-legged guardians of this land, but also knowing that when we stood up on 2 feet, we distanced our hearts from this earth and have to work a little bit harder to understand how to live in harmony and balance upon it. Gratitude for all the creeps and crawls and slithers upon this earth, for the mineral world and the plant world and the mushroom world. Gratitude, Great Spirit, for all of our sacred waters, our ponds and rivers and lakes and springs and streams and our wells and our oceans, and for all of the beings that live inside them, a deepest prayer and asking forgiveness for all we have done to our sacred waters. Gratitude for the winged ones in the sky, for their beautiful, joyful songs, and for when they fly so high in the sky, they get to see the bigger picture of things and have a higher perspective from up above. Gratitude for the wind nation and the cloud nation and the thunder nation and the star nation and the moon and the sun, to remind us that we are all one here together upon this planet. We are all interconnected on this web of life, in this beautiful symbiosis upon this planet. And this is the moment in time for us to rise up and stand up together to imagine new systems of life upon this planet in harmony and balance. Gratitude for all of your ancestors, our ancestors, who are lined up behind us. Going back to the beginning of time, we are the tip of the arrow of our entire ancestral lineage. And to call upon them at this moment for their wisdom, their guidance, to know that we were born for these times. And this is a moment of a great turning, with all of the hope and faith for humanity, to offer this beautiful planet, this beautiful life down to the 7 generations to come. Gratitude, Great Spirit, for the greatest gift that we have been given, the gift of life in this incarnation, in this body, on this planet at this time, for all my relations. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
Aha.
Oh, amen.
Thank you.
Erica, and gratitude for you and for each of you who are here with us today, and who felt the call in your own hearts to show up and participate in the great turning, and what Joanna Macy calls the great turning. And in the Order of the Sacred Earth, the primary reason that we are here to participate in the unfolding of humanity becoming one with the earth, becoming synonymous with what's good for the earth. So I welcome all of you to write a message. Anyone who wants to write a message now, something specific that you're grateful for, something that helps us to all open and continue to open our hearts and to this gift that we're blessed with in this moment to be here. I'll read them so you can tune into your heart. And if you feel like typing a message, I'll share it. Gratitude for trees. Gratitude for Miss Gagnon. Thank you for the prayer. I could truly tune into it today. Thank you, Erica. I totally agree. Yes, spring equinox, the sunrise and sunset each day. Thank you for bringing our spirits together as one family. The incredible fact that I get to be alive in this creation. I'm grateful for spring and hands in the dirt. Grateful for a multi-faith journey in my own life. The star constellations, empathy and communication. Gratitude for the morning birds. Gratitude that my heart is open to the earth. Gratitude for the two-leggeds who come together in a circle to heal the world. Gratitude for open hearts and hope for the turning to align us with all. Gratitude for indigenous wisdom and our yearning for it. Gratitude for the daffodils today. Thank you for the words, the images that show our integration in place. Gratitude for growing and seasons change day and night. The geese coming back and raising their families, the seeds and the bees. Thank you for my relatives, trees, birds, animals, all my relations, all our relations. Gratitude for morning light and golden glow across the lake at sunset. Gratitude for the turning of hearts underway, lest there come to great destruction. Gratitude for the protective Meserbach prayers during COVID and the bird songs and joyous singing during this pandemic. Gratitude for the preservation of our beautiful planet. Gratitude for the love that binds and breathes all of life. For the prayers that inspire. Grateful for my great-grandchildren and the generations to come. Thank you for the children who are standing up for the earth. I'm so grateful for the mountains that surround our magnificent Sharon Spring, land outside Asheville, North Carolina, where I can feel the earth, the wind, the water return and turn again and again. Gratitude for aspirations of the heart, for the good and the right path on the journey. Blessings and gratitude for the freedom and privilege we have to be able to spend the day in the yard all day. Grateful for the gift of life and breath. Gratitude for bloodroot, celandine poppies, Japanese painted fern, and all the spring ephemerals peeking up above the ground now. I was one of the alternative sources of energy workers in 1969 to 1980 and have gratitude to all who now are coming together again, especially for the youth who are our leaders. Grateful for the birds singing and new life sprouting, for growing my moral imagination. Gratitude for indigenous wisdom. Gratitude for the news I received 30 minutes ago that I will be a great aunt. And so let's all take a deep breath together. Gratitude for life, gratitude for children playing, for health, for the great rivers, Mississippi and Missouri confluence flowing to the ocean, for waters that flow and teach us to go with the flow. I'm so grateful that we can have community like this to learn, to be with each other. So let's take a breath and breathe in all this gratitude and send it out to all around the world. Send it out to all who need it, the starving children, the animals that are dying, the humans that are suffering, the spirits who are suffering. You're not alone. We feel you. We're not afraid to feel your pain. And we will stand up to help in any way we can. I hope. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Amen.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mordechai Liebling. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. It's important for us to be grounded in gratitude. And as my teacher, Joanna Macy, says, once we are grounded in gratitude, it is important to open our hearts to be able to feel the pain that is in the world right now. Some years ago, Thich Nhat Hanh was asked by his students, "What is the most important thing to do, our teacher?" And his response surprised them. He said, "Listen to the sound of the earth crying." And we each need to take some time, probably every day, listening to the sound of the earth crying. As Joanna Macy teaches, the measure of our humanity is the pain that we are able to feel for what is happening in the world. If we are truly connected to all that is, connected to all living beings, the four-legged ones, the two-legged ones, the trees, the plants, the earth itself, then we know that there is a great deal of suffering, of destruction going on. And if we open ourselves to that connection, we are going to feel the pain. Unfortunately, we live in a society that pathologizes and individualizes pain. We're made to think that pain is something bad that we have to avoid. We have a society that encourages multiple kinds of addictions to avoid the pain and suffering, whether those are opiates or drugs or shopping or work or screens. There are multiple addictions that help us run away from the pain. And in fact, the society doesn't want us to feel the pain, because if we feel the pain, we might do something to change what's going on. That very pain can motivate us to say, wow, this is bad. What is going on is unacceptable. And we must change it. So the powers that be don't want us to feel that pain. They want us to be numb. And the greatest danger is numbness, because if we're numb, we also can't feel the joy in our lives. To be able to feel the joy, we also have to be able to feel the pain, to be open to what is, to that we are connected to. So we're about to break into Dyads, and I will give you some instructions. But before that, I would like us to just get into our hearts, because we're into our heads so much. So if you could just take a moment and close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. And bring your attention to the area around your heart. Just being aware of your heart and your breath. And now think of a moment when you truly loved another being, whether that was a friend, a partner, a parent, a child, or even a pet. A time that your heart was fully open. And remember a particular instance, and bring that instance to mind when your heart was fully loving another being, and re-experience that moment. Re-experience that moment of your heart being fully open and loving another being. Breathe into that moment. Picture it. Smell it. And now ask your heart to stay open. And on your next exhalation, gently open your eyes. So we are about to go into Dyads. We will have a partner and the person who will go first, whose first name is first in the alphabet to make it easy. You will each have 3 minutes to speak. And I asked Ross if at the end of 3 minutes, he'll broadcast a message that says switch. One person will speak and one person will just listen. It's not a conversation. It's about devoted listening. And you will begin this sentence. When I look around the world, what breaks my heart is. So, and from your heart, when I look around the world, what breaks my heart is, and then finish that sentence, finish that thought, that paragraph, and then go back again. When I look around the world, what breaks my heart is, and try to feel that. And you'll do that for 3 minutes, and then you'll switch, and then the other person will go. So it's just listening to another person's pain. In the Hasidic tradition, it is said that you don't know another person till you know their pain. So this is a way that we will get to know each other. So Ross, could you please put us into Dyads?
Pascal's most recent book, Dancing in God's Earthquake. He brings down one of the most enigmatic people that we've ever encountered, Franz Kafka. And he gives over the story, leopard break into the temple and drink to the dregs what is the sacrificial pitchers. This is repeated over and over again. Finally, it can be calculated in advance, and it becomes part of the ceremony. For Arthur, this story takes on a new as well as ancient meaning. He writes in his book, for me, this story opens with both possibilities, a challenge and a loss. Losing the power to subvert, the leopard is forced into the cage of liturgy and loses his power to challenge. The other is the shock of interference in old forms of prayer may permanently change the paradigm. He goes on to say, it all depends on what we do with the leopard. When I tell the Kafka story, Arthur says, I tell it this way. One day a leopard came walking into the synagogue, roaring and lashing its tail. 3 weeks later, it's become part of the liturgy. What is really going on is that the leopard has been tamed. They yearn for the reawakening that energy would provide. Then Arthur goes on and really summarizes his life to date and its continuation. He says, the mission of my work is to let the leopard out of the cage. So a very personal story. In 1969, I was studying to be a rabbi in New York. Just before I left home at about this time of the year to celebrate the Passover, I received somehow, don't remember if it was in the mail or what, something called the Freedom Haggadah, my first introduction in 1969 to Rabbi Arthur Waskow. I took it with me going home to LA, and I got this gig in a conventional institution. I gave over what was in this Freedom Haggadah, made historical meaning become present, civil rights struggle, opposition to the war in Vietnam. I gave it over to this large gathering. I only learned later, many years later, that I got into good trouble. I've never had the opportunity to thank him, but all those years have gone by reading the books, hearing the teachings of a visionary. The message that I've always gotten from Arthur is a quote from our teacher, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who informed us, and Arthur believes this and has practiced it, that some are guilty, but we're all responsible. And his reminder of us that a new crisis faces us. It's not just about civil rights. It's not just a continuation of wars around the world, but that this planet's destruction quite possibly will happen if we don't accept our responsibility. So this gathering and the program that will follow, that Arthur will explain, is his vision of how to do the corrective work. Arthur.
Unmute. Okay. One of the elements of the training of the Institute, the multi-faith Institute that we are planning, is that we want to follow the rhythm of the festivals in every tradition, especially the Jewish and Christian ones on which this first and not the only institute is being planned. Why the festivals? Well, think about the festivals this way, and this is true about their origins in practically every tradition. Think about them as the offspring of a love affair between a specific community and the earth. That love affair is because the earth loves us, and we have tried to learn to love the earth. The festivals become a way of celebrating and being born from that celebration of love between a human community and earth, of which we are a part. We're not just stewards, which still means that we're separate, but we're part of it, and what happens with others in it affects us, and what we do affects all earth. So, what does it mean to take the festivals, now that both its parents, the earth and humankind, are in serious danger? As we heard just earlier, when one's mother or father is old and wounded, you go and help. You help heal the wound. So that's what we imagine the festivals doing, helping to heal the wounds of earth and the wounds of human beings damaged by the upheavals of the earth, damaged by fires, by floods, by famines, by freezes like the statewide freeze of Texas. All around the earth, those wounds are festering. What does it mean to use the festivals to heal them? A couple of just examples. Hanukkah and Christmas both come at the darkest, in the Northern Hemisphere, the darkest time of the year. In the Hanukkah tradition, that means honoring light. so that we can see, literally see in the darkness. And it also means a story, a story, a mysterious story of how one day's worth of olive oil to keep the light lit in the great temple, the great menorah. How one day's worth of olive oil lasted for 8 days. Well, that's a profound teaching about the preservation of energy. So what would it mean to turn Hanukkah into 8 days of challenging those, the descendants of, the moral descendants of Antiochus, the tyrant, to step out of the way and let us conserve energy by creating co-ops of solar and wind power? What would it mean for congregations of every tradition to say our members are going to gather together to celebrate, to take joy, not only in singing together, but also in using the power of the sun or of the wind that the sun's rays stir to give us the direct control of our power and to heal the earth by using renewable energy. What would it mean? We're about to enter both Passover and the Holy Week of Christianity, which was rooted, according to Christian tradition, in Passover. What would it mean to think about the modern corporate pharaohs of carbon, the carbon pharaohs of our time, making totally unbelievable but true profits out of burning the earth? Can you imagine making a profit out of burning what feeds you, what nurtures you? So Passover could become, and Holy Week and Palm Sunday could become times, we've done it, times to visit the pyramids of power in a city and to confront them with the necessity of change. Pyramids of power like banks that invest their money in burning the earth. Time to change where they invest their money or find people at their front doors challenging them. So those are just examples. We could go at all the festivals to look at their deep teachings and then to turn those deep teachings into public challenge. So that's one major way in which we expect to be learning and teaching both of those who take part in the institute, the Multi-Faith Institute for Eco-Justice Activists. The festivals need to be turned that way at this time, this moment of human and planetary history of the great turning. Part of that turning can happen from the festivals. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. At this point, I'm honored to introduce the faculty who are here with us this evening. And after each of them is introduced and will share a few words about their part of the training, what they bring to the training, you'll then be randomly assigned to a breakout room with one of the faculty to learn a bit more from them. So we begin with Jacqueline Patterson, Senior Director for Environment and Climate at the NAACP.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you all. And yeah, so I will be talking about environmental justice, the intersection of environmental justice, climate justice, environmental racism. So really talking about the work that's been happening around the country, the systemic roots of environmental injustice, and the solutions that frontline communities have been advancing to these challenges. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And Skylar Wilson, whom you met earlier, co-founder of the Order of the Sacred Earth.
Thank you. As Reb Arthur was saying, and Victor too, it's my part will be similar in the sense of helping to bring the integration of this remembrance from the rituals, from ceremonies. My work has been in rites of passage and the cosmic mass and the Order of the Sacred Earth, but to bring those energies and focus into creating change in a really grounded way in your local area community. And so helping to find whatever it is that's your passion, that's your way of bringing your heart into the world and meet the breaking hearts of those who are struggling right now, and to bring it into a really clear and concise, focused task. And so that's my hope is that through this remembering together, we will help to steer this ship in a different direction.
Thank you, Skylar. And next is Sherry Brown, the Executive Director of the National Coalition Building Institute.
Thanks, Nadia. So my session will be teaching specific listening practices to empower activists to take on anti-Semitism, racism, and other forms of oppression that have kept many faith-based activists from prioritizing climate work. We will be learning two things. One, how to understand and then heal from what I have been calling ancestral loss, where many of our peoples, through a history of oppression, have gotten robbed of our lands and then our inherent relationship to the earth. We will learn how to heal from ancestral loss. And two, how to take on the racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of oppression that are in the climate movement that has kept us from taking our righteous place as faith-based activists side by side others doing climate work.
Thank you, Sherry. And next is Jose Aguto of the Catholic Climate Covenant. Is he with us?
He might not be with us. I'm looking for him in our Zoom chat here.
Okay. While you're looking for him, we'll move on to Rabbi Victor Gross, President of Yerusha and co-director of Ruach HaAretz.
So I will be teaching in the future with Rabbi Mordechai Rieblin about something that occurs in the Hebrew scriptures that has the potential of being revitalized in our time. Specifically, there is a connection between the end of the 6 days of creation of God as explained in Genesis and God resting on the Sabbath that he created. And in the 10 Commandments, giving over the Sabbath to human beings to observe, but not just human beings. The Sabbath was intended for the people who worked for an individual, for the animals that produced food, milk, whatever, did the work in the fields. So it was an extension of the Sabbath of God moving on to human beings and moving on to more. But there was one thing left out. There was nothing about the Sabbath for the earth. And that came in Hebrew scriptures in two specific ideas that were ordered to come into existence. That is what's called the Shemitah and what is called the Jubilee or the Yovel in Hebrew. The Shemitah occurred every 7 years, and that ordered the land to lie fallow. And there was a certain remission of debts that had been accrued in the 6 years leading up to that period of time. And it was described as a Sabbath for the Lord, for God, for the breath of all living things was supposed to enjoy relaxation and remission from all the things that were expected and ordered of an individual. Then in the Shemitah happened every 7 years. And when it was multiplied 7 times 7, equaling 49, then on the 50th year, the horns were sounded in Jerusalem and the Jubilee took place. And everything that had accrued in those 50 years, land ownership, all the property reversed to its original owners. Once again, the land was laid fallow. So on an individual basis, in the collective of ancient Israel, this was observed. Now we're going to explore in our course how this can become universal. Why? Because it's absolutely needed for bringing about equality and bringing about the rest that the earth really needs, along with human beings.
Thank you. And Rabbi Mordechai Liebling, Shalom Center board member and interim director of Organizing for Power Interfaith, which is the largest faith-based community organizing network in Pennsylvania.
Well, as I'll be teaching with Victor, he pretty much said what we're doing. I will just add that another way of talking about that is called Jubilee Economics, which in the wider world, it's sometimes known as, which is taking those cycles of 7 and see how we use that to create justice, both justice for people and justice for the land.
Thank you. Reverend Donna Shaper of Judson Memorial Church.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be teaching on 3 subjects. 2 are delightful and you will enjoy, and the 3rd will perplex you. The social analysis of desacralization will be the first topic. And by that, I mean, why do people throw things out of windows, trash bags of fast food? What is that about? It's an anti-ritual act. And my interest is in how we re-sacralize even fast food and litter and very small things. The more personal subject is what I call enchantment, and it mimics the desacralization and resacralization process. I want to re-enchant the sense of nature, fun, life, make it beautiful to wake up in the morning rather than feeling disenchanted before anything's even happened. And so that's the personal path. And I'd like to just point to some directions for doing that. So desacralizing, resacralizing institutions, disenchanting and re-enchanting ourselves and understanding that they're both together. The 3rd is a much more political and not so spiritual or aesthetic matter. And it has to do with how much authoritarianism is going to be required to stop the destruction of the world. hard subject, but I think once we are in right relationship with our institutions and ourselves, we may dare to touch that subject.
Thank you. And Reverend Matthew Fox of the Order of the Sacred Earth. Unmute, Matt.
So I was very taken by Reb Arthur's vision in bringing forward this institute. And it was so synchronistic because just 2 weeks before I heard about this happening, I had written in my jotting of thoughts that I felt a very undervalued energy source in humanity is our festivals and our various rich celebrations, almost all of which have a direct relationship to the seasons and therefore to the stars and to the earth. And then 2 weeks later, this idea came up and to build it around festivals. So what I want to do is, as I teach, would be to respond to the festival of the season, especially through my tradition as a Christian, but not in a narrow way, because most of the festivals, as Reb Arthur pointed out, are seasonal. So Passover and Easter are contemporaneous practically, and the same is true of Ramadan and so forth. So this week, of course, what's on my mind is Easter. So I'd like to address that in this afternoon's gathering. And very appropriate with just the previous presenter is the theme of recovering the sacred. Thomas Berry puts it wonderfully when he says that we will not save what we do not love. It is also true that we will neither love nor save what we do not experience as sacred, and that eventually only our sense of sacred will save us. So I want to explore some of my ancestors in terms of the great mystics of the West who teach us how to wake up. And that's really the theme of Easter, is waking up. And I think that there's so much sleepfulness and denial and misinformation and lies and cover up about climate change, about the crisis we're in as a species. And so I want to explore how we wake one another up. And certainly our rituals are meant to do that. And each season has its own rituals and its own manner of waking one another up.
Thank you. So you are going to be invited momentarily into a breakout session with one of the 8 faculty that you've just met, including Reb Arthur. And you'll have about 15 minutes with that faculty member to explore more deeply what they've just presented. We'll see you back in 15.
Hello?
Sorry, I jumped off and came back. I was supposed to do another meeting.
Well, here people are. I can't tell exactly how many, but welcome.
Thank you.
Baruch haba, baruchim habaim. Welcome in the blessed into the sacred community of those who care about the sacred earth. So the focus of what I wanted to talk about was mostly what I just gave a hint of. And let me, since I've given the hint, let me open the discussion to whoever wants to begin joining and questioning. What does it mean to use the festivals themselves as frameworks for changing the world, not only as memorials inside ourselves for remembering what might have happened in the past, for remembering spring and remembering the darkest time of year, but what does it mean to change the world by using the festivals? So that's the question, and whoever wants to join with their own questions or answers, that is welcome to do it.
For me, I think it's a great idea to get different groups talking and see what we can all do together to help improve our planet. The more people that we include and the more people that we educate, I think we will be much better off. I've discovered so many people really have no idea, they see a little bit on the news here and there, but they have no full understanding of
Well,
what we're doing to our planet.
let me ask specifics. What would you, or what would Ross or Ruth Alice suggest as ways of using a festival? Name one that you're moved by. How would you go about addressing a public sphere to make that festival address the issue of healing the earth?
Well, Easter is a celebration of rebirth, as is springtime. And I think having people together to vision what a healing planet would look like and visioning where we would be in 20, 30 years would be a positive way to celebrate that.
The theme of resurrection for Easter, given the damage and the wounds that the earth and we are suffering, would be a very powerful image to bring to Easter. What would it mean to rebirth, to resurrect the energy that's been so damaged? So it would be interesting to develop prayers and statements that could be shared by members of a church to do that, and maybe in public. What are the symbols of Easter, aside from the bunny? What are the symbols of Easter that could be carried into the public sphere? Flowers, lilies, right? Palm Sunday, I actually took part with Reverend Donna Schaper of Judson Memorial Church in New York City. She spoke just before. We began Palm Sunday with a walk, more than a march, a walk into the city to what I call the pyramids of power. And then we came back to do Passover Seder, which of course in Christian tradition also became the Last Supper. So there's a real interconnection of the festival. Well, so if we face the pyramids of power for Palm Sunday, what do we do in a Seder to energize people for the rest of Passover? That could be an example of how, in fact, together, a synagogue and a church, or just two communities, could act. Are there other thoughts about how to use a celebration? A celebration? What about the whole period of Lent, which we're in right now?
Well, many times people think of giving up things, and certainly eating less meat would be an appropriate thing for Lent.
Yeah, right. It used to be, but hasn't been so. But
Right.
now makes sense at both levels, the spiritual level and the political level. I think those two things are not really two different things. One is the spirit, what we call spiritual is about the spirituality of the individual. What we call politics is about the spirituality of the whole society. They're really both spiritual questions. So giving up meat, in Jewish tradition for Passover, you give up chametz, that's yeast and sourness. It makes bread swell up. And people have been talking about, the Hasidic tradition talked about chametz being anything that makes you feel swollen. So it makes you feel like a blown up, not like a grown up. And we could think about what it would mean to give up the things that swell us up and damage the world by doing that. So that's a kind of very close first cousin of Lent. Any other thoughts? Meir Bracha. I thought I got a phone call that I couldn't answer. You got on.
Able to get on. Yes, thank you.
Good.
I haven't
Baruch
seen.
Hashem. Baruch Hayah, and that you got on. So what are you thinking about when you think about using a festival as a public address to change the world?
There's there's so much I can't even identify just one, and I can't think right now when I'm put on the spot. So let me think.
All right. Okay. Well, let me toss one in. In 2022, there will be a general election. Sukkot comes a few weeks before the general election. Every other year, it comes before a general election in America. And it's not an accident because both of them are about the harvest. The decision as to when to make our elections in early November was because you had to make sure the farmers finished the harvest before you were going to have election day, so they could take a breath and then vote. That's the origin of when we do elections. And Sukkot is the harvest festival. So, question, the values of Sukkot, which really are the closest to the earth that any of the festivals brings, any of the Jewish festivals anyway, brings us. When I wrote a book called Seasons of Our Joy about the Jewish festivals, the publisher told me I had to put in a glossary of Yiddish and Hebrew words. So I wrote the glossary and I wrote Sukkah. That's the singular of Sukkah. Sukkah, hut with a leafy roof. It came back from the printer. It said Sukkah, hut with a leaky roof. And I said, hey, that's God's typographical correction. I'm not going to change that, because the real truth is the whole point of a sukkah, a very primitive hut that you're supposed in theory to live in for 8 days, The whole theory of a sukkah is that it brings you as close as you could possibly get in a sort of house to the earth. So that's already a teaching. We have experimented, and we're hoping to do more in 2022, we the Shalom Center, with a kind of a slogan: share Sukkot, grow the vote. It almost rhymes. The O is a little different in Hebrew and in English, but share Sukkot, grow the vote. Make Sukkot into a time to bring the values of Sukkot into getting out the vote, and bring the values and the voting together with Sukkot as the binder of how to do it. So that would be another way, greening Sukkot. It should be really share Sukkot, green and grow the vote. So that's another example. Other thoughts that people might have? I can't see the photograph well, but oh, is that Victor? Yeah, looks like Victor here.
We're back, Arthur. People are coming back.
Yeah, I'm not the only one back.
No. We all got brought back. It's a great thing about Zoom. Nobody can be late.
I had nothing to do with it.
Okay, here we are. What happens now?
Welcome back, everyone.
Hi.
15 minutes goes pretty quickly.
Right.
In the next few
Really?
minutes, you will have another opportunity in a few minutes to engage with one of the other faculty. But for these next few minutes, I want to invite you to share in the chat, if you will, something that you learned just now, something that inspired you, that you just heard from the instructor with whom you were engaging, or something new that that you think we all should know. So I'm going to invite you to put those learnings into the chat, and I'll read out a few of them so that we can all harvest a little bit of the gleanings from these instructors. So the practice of Jubilee goes on now in Israel. Listening to what others are doing is inspiring. What else did you learn from the instructor that you just sat with for 15 minutes? That there's a huge need for white people to be able to learn how to move forward in a just fashion, how to be intentional. For Jews who often had to leave, ancestral loss is real. We must be conscious of our alignment with the earth. The 2022 election comes just after one of the festivals, and we want to encourage people to vote. During the pandemic, many members of the faith community have been exiled from their sacred space. How do we re-enter? I learned some new terms to research rights of nature and environmental racism. I love the idea of re-enchantment. The practice of Jubilee must include returning land taken from Palestinians. We had a discussion about anti-Semitism and the climate movement, where many major events take place on Saturday mornings or on important Jewish holidays. But is there anything more holy that we can be doing than showing up for these events? Farmers sold their daughters when they needed money because of a poor planting year and little harvest. Farmers live in cycle of debt. Black farmers in the US have decreased, and land has been stolen, institutional racism. Thinking about a universal, sustainable standard of living is important. I learned a great deal about why Jews might not have felt connected to the land and the environment. I'm not Jewish. My ancestors were Mormon pioneers who were attacked and left to settle in Salt Lake in the Rocky Mountains. I've always loved nature, hiking, canoeing, gardening, and now live in the Blue Ridge Mountains and work with people of all faiths who are engaged in climate change activists. It makes a huge difference where you live now. Well, I want to thank you. And the small family farm is a thing of the past. Sadly, that's true in much of the US. Thank you for all that you've shared and more, and just continue populating the chat, because we will harvest all of this later and share more of your thoughts with one another. At this point, Ross will send you into a breakout session with another member of the faculty.
Hi.
Welcome back, everyone.
In mid-sentence.
In mid-sentence, I think that probably happened to more than one instructor, but we are grateful for the time that we did have with one another. And I'd like to invite you once again, as my teacher, Reb Zalman, would have said, we're coming in for a landing. And just before that, I want to invite you once again to share in the chat. What are your gleanings from this last session that you engaged in with another instructor? What have you learned? What have you gleaned? What inspired you? What would you like to share with all of us? Fear of dying leads to need for power and control, which leads to using the earth for our own ends. I feel as if I've spent 2 hours with my beloved community. That's lovely. A wealth of perspectives in our group. Can reparative finance be part of Jubilee Economics? The next enlightened master is the community. From Jackie's session, it was enlightening to bring into awareness the invisible off-the-grid areas that need help. There are so many of us with so much talent and so much passion. There must be a way we can make the change needed. What about reparations to those who've been disenfranchised and oppressed? Jackie Patterson is committed to environmental racism, and that is what I wish to address at this time in the world. There are ways to structure capitalism to fit into the Jubilee system. For example, every 7th year, your loan payments could go entirely to principal and not to interest. Easter as resurrection of a mortally wounded earth, humankind, and a reawakening from denial of that near death. Leaving land to rest on the 7th year is quite a daunting duty given the need to use land for economic purposes. Noticing subtle and overt discounting of our concerns, emoting the frustration in a safe space so I can persist and influence, from Sherry's group. Thank you. Thank you. Such wonderful gleanings, and as you continue to share them, they'll be captured, as I said, and we'll share them with you all later. And as we bring this gathering to a close this evening, I want to thank each of you for hearing the call and for joining us. Thanks to our planning group, including tonight's faculty, along with Robert Brand and Adam Scher of the Shalom Center, and Amitai Gross of Yerusha Ruach HaAretz, and Mariko Middleton of the Order of the Sacred Earth. Thanks also to Andre Daughtry, who's with Judson Memorial Church, for that beautiful video and music that helped us ground our gratitude earlier this evening. And a very special thanks to Nave Barlow of the Shalom Center and Ross Weissman for all the backroom and tech support leading up to this evening and throughout the evening. All of you who registered for tonight's event will receive from us very shortly an invitation to take part in the training program. The program is slated to begin with a 2-day immersion on April 13th and 14th, and it will be followed by 9 weekly sessions on Wednesday evenings. And then there will be follow-up gatherings with the activists 2 or 3 times over the following year. We hope we've inspired you tonight, and we hope that you are inspired, therefore, to consider joining us in this very important training, this vision of Reb Arthur's. So as we close this evening in prayer, I invite you to watch this slideshow as our closing with the anthem that Jean Ritchie wrote about our responsibility for God's creation. As we witness creation at her best, and as we hear the words of the song in the cool of the day, I invite you to share in the chat your prayer or your intention for the care of our earth and all her inhabitants. And thank you once again for being with us.
My Lord, he said unto me, do you like my garden so fair? You may live in this garden if you keep my grasses green, and I'll return in the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Oh, this earth is a garden, the garden of my Lord, and he walks in his garden in the cool of the day. And my Lord, he said unto me, do you like my garden so pure? You may live in this garden if you keep my waters clean, and I'll return in the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Oh, this earth is a garden, the garden of my Lord, and he walks in his garden in the cool of the day. And my Lord, he said unto me, do you like my pasture so green? You may live in this garden if you will feed my lambs, and I'll return in the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Oh, this earth is a garden, the garden of my Lord, and he walks in his garden in the cool of the day. And my Lord, he said unto me, do you like my garden so free? You may live in this garden if you keep my people free, and I'll return in the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. Now is the cool of the day. For this earth is a garden, the garden of my Lord, and he walks